is Alyssa White, and this is the Dear Journal podcast. Sit down with me to talk about everything from being a girl in her early 20s, figuring out life, to being an athlete, and to my experiences traveling. I think there's something in it for everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and let's get straight into it. Alright guys, welcome back to the Dear Journal podcast. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions from my Instagram and things like that, just asking like what I've been doing in Europe the last, 6 months. And, I ended season 1 leaving for Europe, and now I am starting season 2 back from Europe. And that being said, I have a lot of things that happened, and this episode is mainly going to revolve more around the football, soccer side of what was going on, because that was my main goal going over there. Now, honestly, I started with going to Spain, and while I have an agent in England, I started going to Spain because our coach from last year's our academy team, he got promoted to a professional team, and with that, he took 2 of my teammates. And, he said that I could come and I could train, and it was more of a trial than I thought when I got there. It was like a proper trial, but the thing is, he already knew how I play. He knew that he would want me, but the problem is the visa situation and the fact that the club did not really want to deal with any more internationals because it's very expensive, and that's what a lot of people don't understand is the visa situation kills so many careers for Americans or any other non-EU or UK citizens wanting to go play abroad. It's very hard to get a work visa, especially in women's football, because it comes down to money. So, that being said, my time in Spain was really, really great though. I really miss my teammates there, so shout out to them. But honestly, the football, I will always love Spanish football. It is possession based, and it really got me back into like a good groove. I really started off just kind of keeping possession, not really going 1v1s because I was still recovering from my ACL, and it was only like the 8-month mark where I was training in a team setting with them and in like a trial situation, which is more intense. So in that regard, it was a bit kind of nerve-wracking, but I got back in the groove quickly. And so I was there in Spain for a month, and it basically ended on the terms of, we'll stay in contact for the next season, but they can't take me right now for visa situations. So, that being said, I flew to England. And in England, I literally got off the plane and immediately went to like an assessment and some like speed and agility testing with this guy named Mick Clegg. And if you don't know who that is, he is like infamous for basically training Ronaldo when he was at Man United, and is quite a like hard ass, but like very much knows what he's doing and expects a lot from the athletes that come into his training center. So all in all, it was a really, really cool experience. I got a lot out of it, and even though, again, this was still kind of into my end of the recovery of my ACL, I think it was still a really good, cool experience. And now if I go back, I have like data to compare to. But it was a lot of like light reaction, quick stopping, cutting, all these sorts of things. And he's very particular about how you have to do it. And if you mess up, then it doesn't count. So it was a little stressful, but very fun. So that was the first night I got into England. And then after that, this was in Manchester, I took a train to Blackburn, England, which out of all the places I could have gone in England for the first time, I did not think it was going to be that city and to have lived there for a month. But it was honestly, that little like mill town kind of won my heart because it was really, really cute, and it's just a lot of like blue collar people. But in regards to the soccer, I'm just going to switch back and forth between saying soccer and football because 2 different kind of audiences here. But basically, I had to go into an assessment with a coach first before he kind of would give the go-ahead to bring me into the Blackburn Rovers team. So I do my assessment with him, and he really I guess, liked me or kind of gave the go-ahead. And so after that, he brought me into the U21s at Blackburn. And basically, they brought me into the U21s because I'm still 20. And so they want to bring me in the first team knowing that I'm, like, under that age. So, and the problem is, like, I don't have a footprint in Europe yet. And this is going to be the problem that continues to come up. So, you know, I go and I'm starting to train with them, but they only train like twice a week. It's not very intense. The quality of the practices, I wouldn't say was the best, and I was getting very frustrated because it wasn't really giving me a proper opportunity to, like, show what I could do. They're very, like, minimal practices. So in terms of the team setting, I don't think that England was the best, but in terms of individual training, I was working with that coach that did the original assessment a lot and one of his other coaches, and I would say that it was probably the sharpest and, like, best I felt technically in, like, a long time. And I was honestly probably in great shape by the time I left England because we also did a lot of conditioning. And personally, I feel like it was probably the month that I've developed the most, and I loved everything about that. But at the same time, it was a lot on my body, and I pushed it one time a little bit too much because I was out in the snow, the freezing cold snow, practicing a certain kind of way to hit a long ball to where it kind of has backspin, and I did it for like half an hour out in the cold, and the next day I realized, my quad really, really hurts when I kick a ball. And that being said, the next day was supposed to be my first kind of real trial game with the Rovers, and I could only play really with one leg. Like, I couldn't kick it with my left or with my right. So I played the entire game with just one leg. But the funny part is the coaches didn't even notice for the first 30 minutes. So in that aspect, it was okay. But, like, the other coach that was assessing me was there, and he could see me, like, wince when I, like I was just cringing because it hurt so bad. And after that, I didn't train the rest of the time I was in England. And that being said, it was coming up on the holidays, so I didn't have time to get in the first team. And so in some ways, England didn't really go how I hoped it would. But then I went to Germany because it was going into the holidays. I was going to go spend it with my family in Berlin. And the injury just wasn't getting better, though. I got it assessed by a trainer in England, but the problem is when you're traveling and things like that, you don't really have healthcare because you're waiting for the team to kind of sign you, and then they take care of that. And in Spain, I had it because it was more of like a proper setup trial, but the Rovers not necessarily. So it was very hard for me to get my quad looked at and get like a proper assessment of what was wrong, which was super frustrating because for the first month in Germany, when I was with my family and just kind of trying to recover, I was doing all the wrong things without realizing it. So it was just getting worse. And I think January comes along and I'm trying to get ready to go to Ireland to do trials there because that was the window we were looking at. And unfortunately, it just didn't get better in time, and I finally saw a good physiotherapist who worked with RB Leipzig and was like the head guy for that because my cousin from Germany used to be on like the German track national team, and so they had like some connections with physios, and this guy was amazing. So with his plan, I got better in like 4 weeks, but it was 4 weeks. And by the time I was kind of like ready, I'd missed the window to where the club would have possibly kind of taken care of my accommodation. And I mean, I had been over in Europe for 3 months at this point. And of course, when I was home, I was working and saving up so that this was possible. But you get to a certain point where you're having to make decisions more financially based. And going to Ireland, I would have had to pay my own way there, my own everything. And at the same time, I had this opportunity with Hertha BSC in Berlin because of connections through that physio and that kind of thing. So the coach calls up my uncle and says, like, have her come to practice, like, tomorrow. So I kind of put Ireland on a hold and go try this out. I go, and the girls are really nice, and the coach is super welcoming. I mean, just the fact that he was like, yeah, like, bring her in, like, very nonchalantly, was really cool. So it was very kind of impromptu, but I end up sticking with them for the next 2 months. 2 months? Yeah. And I'm training with them twice a week, but basically after the first week of like the proper trial, where I get to play a trial game with them against Berlina Mitte, I did really well in that, and they were really happy with me. But they basically came back to me saying that they had already promised the girls that because they took over another club. This is the first year of this team. They took over the other girls' club in that area in Berlin, and they told them, if you stick with us and play with us for this year, you will get to play. But they have like 30 girls. I mean, so they said that they know that I make them better and that they want me for next season because they want to push to be in the second league. Then they offered me this like dual playing thing, so I'd play with Berlina Mitte, who's also in their league, on the weekends, and then train with them twice a week and train with Berlina twice a week. So this was quite interesting proposal, but honestly, when I went to Berlina and I tried it out and was playing with the girls, they were so nice, and while it's a bit awkward being in between two teams, it was a really cool just kind of situation because they gave me the opportunity to meet more people in a city that I'm not from. And I mean, the team was at the bottom of the league, so they were trying not to get relegated. And then Hertha was kind of sitting pretty in the middle, so they didn't really care about, or not care, but they knew they weren't going to get promoted or relegated. So for them, they wanted to honor what they said to the other girls. And basically, I had to come home because I found out my visa situation got a bit too complicated. And so now I'm back in the US. And all that being said, I realize when people ask like what my journey is, what I've been doing, it's not the most simple of stories. And if you even ask me to tell this story from the beginning, right when I leave high school, it doesn't get any more simple. But through kind of posting on social media and documenting my experience, I think that I've made a lot of connections with other players who are abroad or looking to go abroad, and they're wondering what it's like, what the challenges are. And if you have gathered anything from the last 10 minutes of me talking, then you'll probably realize it is not the easiest thing in the world. And I think that especially for internationals, it's just so much harder because half the time it's not even really how you're playing. Is the visa situation taken care of? Does the club have money? Do you have accommodation? It's like everything outside of it. And in women's football particularly, it's that much harder because there's just not as much money in the game. But for me, I came back and basically I'm going to go back to Germany for sure. I got into a school in Berlin for like graphic design because I realized while I was over there that I was making all these videos, I was doing these things. I even picked up a remote job in England with that coach that I was working with because he needed somebody to do social media and all these things that I was kind of already doing. And so naturally I figured out that I really like graphic design and media and all those things. So I got into a school in Berlin, and this is how I'll get my visa basically, but it's not like the easiest thing. So, you have to get your foot in the door somehow, and I think that's the hardest part if you're not coming from like fifth year college or something where you have all these highlights. And obviously I've been injured for the last year as well. So in many ways I feel that, the clock starts to tick when you get like 21 and 22 of like, are you progressing in your career? And I think a lot of my friends are facing that kind of wall as well, because you have to ask yourself at a certain point, like, you know, if you've really done enough in this time. And I think this is a question I've been scared of, but I'm still young, so it's okay. But I think that's a problem for further down the road. But right now, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much all in on this journey and this experience, because I know that this is what I want to do. And playing in Europe in all three of those countries, was an amazing experience. I mean, I met so many people and learned so many things and seen so many different styles of play as well. And let me tell you, I think that German soccer is pretty cool, because it's a cool mix of English, which is more direct, and Spanish, which is more possession based. So it has like a nice in between, and they have like an influence of both. So I think it really bodes well for my playing style, because I have an attacking mindset, but then when I was in Spain, I really learned how to kind of control the flow of possession, being the 6, which is what I probably will be playing for Hertha. And it's just interesting because, yeah, German is hard to learn, which is the other part that I haven't mentioned, is language barriers. So playing abroad, obviously, unless you're in the UK, you're going to have a language barrier. And luckily, though, in sports, many things are universal, and it's pretty obvious what a drill is when you're looking at it. It's more complicated when they're talking about technique or specific things. Those things I don't really pick up on. So unfortunately, I think you do lose a little bit sometimes in the development area, just because you're not getting the specific words that they're saying. But by the time I left Germany, it was really, really interesting to see how much I had already learned in German, starting from ground zero. And a lot of that is due to the fact that I was playing with these girls. I mean, you're literally immersed. You don't have a choice but to assimilate, okay? And I think that's really cool, but, you know, it's also not the easiest thing. So when people ask me, you know, what it's like, I think you really have to be honest about the different challenges that you're going to come upon, because it's not just all like traveling and seeing all these cool cities and playing with these different teams. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty in it, which I knew going into it, but I don't know if other people know that. And so my goal with sharing my experience is that maybe you have some insight into what it really takes to go abroad, and especially if you don't have like a footprint yet. And I've gotten a lot of questions on Instagram from people just asking me like how you get over there, and half of it is networking. It really is. People underestimate making connections and just like asking questions. I mean, you can start with an agent, but I think a lot of times agents are hard to deal with because you never know what their real motive behind it is. I mean, in women's football, it's not necessarily money, that's for sure, but it really depends if you're a guy. So you kind of have to go with agents with caution, but a lot of my friends and teammates I know purposely don't want to use agents, so they try to just network naturally. And the football community is pretty huge, so it's really just whether or not you're willing to put yourself out there. But in terms of my situation now, I am at home, and I am right now training on my own for this month until the WPSL league starts, which is like a summer league for college players here in the US, so that they can stay fit and have somewhere to play during those 3 months. So that's basically what I'll be joining in May. So only a few more weeks. And in the meantime, I'm working and I'm saving and trying to like set myself up well to go back to Europe and properly join a team and sign in August. So either way, I think I'll be in Berlin pretty much next year, and I just need to really play a full season. So with all the injuries and everything, this has been the main challenge, and I just know once I have like a proper team and I'm in the environment day in, day out, then I think a lot of good is going to come from that. So, and for my development, I'm just excited to see what happens. So that's kind of my plan right now. And, you know, this kind of level of uncertainty might not work for everybody, and I'm aware of that. But it's also very exciting, you know? I think that I've gotten so used to traveling around and not being in one place for that long that maybe settling down for like a year is gonna be hard for me in a sense. I can't explain it, but I think I'm used to a certain level of spontaneity now, and there were days when I was in Europe where I literally didn't know what country I was gonna be in next and when and where. So if you can cope with that kind of stress, more power to you, because it's not the easiest thing, but it is also exciting, and I'm young. So if you're also young and, you know, you want to take that step and move abroad and play abroad, I personally think it's one of the best experiences and one of the best things you'll do. But, you know, there's good and bad things to everything, pros and cons to everything. So if you're deciding whether you want to, you know, go to college and go that route or go abroad, there's different challenges with both of them. So, but you could get more out of one than the other. It just depends on the type of person you are. But regardless, I know this whole episode was more focused on the football side of my life, but in the future there will be other topics as well. But I also have an unreleased episode that I filmed in England that I will be posting probably later on, so stay tuned for that. And for future episodes, I have some ideas, but if you have any, then go ahead and comment on a video. And yeah, I'm really excited to restart this podcast. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Dear Journal podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you next time.